The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Victor Lambs. Hey, Victor.
Hi, Dom.
And Thomas Sanjurjo. Hey, Thomas.
Hi, Dom.
It's great to have you here, Thomas. Father Joseph is on a month-long retreat. I don't think it's a silent retreat. I'm not sure Father could survive that long on a silent retreat.
That would be difficult, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think probably for anybody on these podcasts, that would be difficult.
Yes, we're all talkers. It would be impossible. I'd have to hold my hand still. That's the Italian silent retreat. In any case, thank you all for joining us. And let's get right into things. We do have some letters, some email from, showing my age, some email. This is not coming in the post, but, to me, in my mailbox. We have some emails from listeners who had some questions, and we love to get your questions. I mean, we love your whatever feedback you send, but, if we can answer some questions. I'm not saying we have the answers, but we'd love to discuss them and maybe give us some ideas. The first one comes from Myra, who wrote in. She said, I have 2 personal Yahoo accounts, 4 Gmail accounts, personal, academic, and private practice, and an info@gmail account tied to my Squarespace hosted website. For my private practice, I use TherapyMate and AutoNotes AI for client notes, while my telehealth contract work uses Therapy Notes. I also host a podcast on Podbean. I work in an Apple ecosystem, MacBook Pro and iPhone, but need cross-platform compatibility to collaborate with colleagues and clients on various systems. My goals for 2025 include growing my practice while managing a busy personal life. Ideally, an all-in-one solution for email security, secure communications for personal and professional accounts, text messaging, HIPAA-compliant client messaging, EHR, which I'm not sure what that is, but maybe you guys do, for managing HIPAA compliance for private pay clients, probably like a billing system, and calendars connecting professional, personal, and podcast schedules. I'm considering platforms like Proton Mail Business or Orchid and need affordability, integration, and ease of use. Suggestions?
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Well, I should say, first off, the big wrinkle in this is, as someone for whom HIPAA applies, that's the big issue, and it's a very specialized request. And I don't know if any of us have the knowledge of HIPAA compliance to get you there, but maybe we can give some ideas of places to start anyway.
I think as far as the text messaging goes, you're probably good with something like Signal or one of the. WhatsApp even is end-to-end encrypted, so
yeah,
that's not a bad way to go. I don't think you're going to be able to wrap text messaging into a single platform option here,
right?
But for email security, Proton Mail is really good, and I have used their basic platform for quite a while. And when we got this email in, I started to dig into a little bit more of the business side of what they offer, and it seems pretty reasonable to me. I think the big thing that you're gaining there over a Google business system is that security layer that is going to be easily accessible as part of the platform.
Yeah, agree. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if it were me, I would probably start by looking at if there's any kind of, patient portal or, medical billing platforms for small practices. I can't recommend any, but if you Google them, they're out there for, $20 a month or however much they are. And those would probably have HIPAA compliance baked in. The advantage of using a service like that is if anything ever goes wrong, you can say, it was them, type thing.
Right.
Rather than if rolling your own is, it sounds like Myra is definitely a do-it-yourselfer and would like to come up with more of a bespoke solution that way. But just given the risk involved, I'd probably look for a managed platform that takes on that risk aspect for you. If it were me, I'm very risk averse though.
I'll take just a sort of a contrarian view for just a second, because I'm not saying you guys are wrong, but there is the one thing to consider, which is when you put all your eggs in one basket, all your eggs are in one basket. And so if something were to go wrong in an all-in-one solution, it's all there. Your messaging, your email, all that stuff is in one place. Whereas if you have multiple, different software packages, any one provider goes down, you still get the others. So you got to weigh it's risk versus, you're weighing the different risks to go off of what Victor said.
And I've never used a patient portal as a consumer, as a patient. I've never used a patient portal where I've said, aha, this is it. They've got it. This is easy for me to use and intuitive 100%. For me to reach my doctor. We're
looking at you, my charts.
Yeah.
The one that changed me, and this is not patient portal, but the Discover Bank app is an absolute pleasure to use. Like,
really,
everything about it. I even, if I need to make transfers, I will go to that app to make a transfer from something else to my Discover, because it's just so much easier to set up.
Yeah, my bank is, I have Bank of America. It's okay. I wouldn't say it's a pleasure to use, but yeah. I have yet to find a patient portal for any medical provider where I said this is great to use on my end. So I can't imagine what it's like on their end.
Right.
So I had this. Yeah. So I hope that helps, Myra. I'm not sure if we did or not, but it maybe gave you some ideas of places to look. But it's such a specialized request that you may want to do a little deep diving in a specialized manner. But Proton for privacy is definitely something to think about. I would say that.
Keep on podcasting.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. We should let us know what your podcast is. Now I'm curious. Then John sent in an email, a longtime listener, John. And this is just a portion of the rest of your email, John. I know I got the rest of it, and some of it applied to other shows, so it may come up in other shows as well. But John said a gift recommendation from Christmas 2023 was the Toy Box 3D printer. I think it was one of you two guys who recommended it.
I believe so.
Yeah. After a year of use, I can say it's one of the best Christmas gifts. We still use it all the time, mostly for small toys, but I've made a few useful items as well. It really is like the Apple equivalent of 3D printing. I did end up replacing one belt and making one very minor calibration, but otherwise it's been completely plug and play. They have a newer, bigger version out that we'd like to get at some point. My last comments are about switching to Linux. My Windows PC isn't upgradable to Windows 11, so I recently installed a Linux Mint on a flash drive and played around with it a bit. I've tried Ubuntu before when a laptop became obsolete, but Mint is really nice, user-friendly OS. My question for the Linux folks is, can it be user-friendly enough for the whole family to use and allow us to go completely cold turkey from Windows?
Oh. I say yes. Now I say yes. I say yes, but with a big caveat, because you don't engage with Linux in the same way that you do with Windows. So you're always having to figure out how to run updates and how to, install apps and things like that. Mint is, in my opinion, probably the closest you're going to get to a Windows experience, but you still have to learn some of that Linux backend and be comfortable doing that. So just running the sudo apt upgrade and getting the packets from the packet manager. Those things will still have to happen, and you'll have to make it part of your hygiene that you're teaching your kids, because it's not going to happen on the back end like it does with Windows.
The way I look at it is the difference between Linux and Windows, in my experience, is on Windows I'm working on my computer, and on Linux I'm working on my computer. I spend a lot of time just working just to get the computer to work, whereas on Windows I just turn it on and do whatever I need to do. And especially as we get into our discussion here around 3D printing, I have kids who love just like loading up like 3D modeling programs and other things. And, just with Windows, it's a lot easier just to install the software, and it works. It has, support and stuff. So in my experience, no, I have, done, various Linux loads for various things just to breathe life into old laptops. And, it's fun for a little while, but I keep coming back to Windows.
I don't disagree with that point. But the final point there is it's, you know, when dad is getting 3 or 4 computers on a weekend, and that's what I do is like fix the computers or just run updates just to get them back into a common place. And I did that for a while. You know, I had 4 kids on the Linux laptops for a little while, and it was fun, but at the same time, they didn't want to do some of the just regular maintenance that needed to be done.
Like if John was the admin and did all of the maintenance stuff, is it easy enough to use the software on it for them? I mean, is it for the rest of the family?
Yeah, I would say so. It's pretty straightforward. You are going to find instances where you plug a new device in and it just doesn't work. And, you know, it absolutely should, and it would on a Windows machine, and it just won't on Linux. And you've got to, you know, then go and scour the internet for why, what was going on with this thing that I need to fix. Right. But yeah, so it depends on how much you want to sit down and work with it. And that's really what it's also probably what we're going to talk about when we get into talking about the 3D printers, because even the 3D printers are that way too. yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, John's experience with the Toy Box 3D is it's been plug and play pretty much, but that's not every 3D printer out there. So yeah. Excellent. Well, that's good. Oh, well, John, I hope that helps. And thank you both again for your feedback, your emails. We really do appreciate that. Let's move on to our main discussion. As we've hinted at, we're going to be talking about 3D printing. We've talked about 3D printing before on the show, and we want to kind of revisit the topic. What's new? What have we been doing? What's some interesting stuff to know about 3D printing at the moment? Because it's a constantly changing technology. There's new stuff all the time with it. Just to kind of lay out like a little review of what 3D printing is. It's a machine that prints in 3 dimensions instead of a flat on a paper. It outputs a material, usually heated to high temperatures, that is molded on a bed over a period of time. And the material that you can create, it's pretty much like plastic. There are other materials, but most consumer stuff is pretty much different kinds of plastic. And, you know, whether it's there's different kinds of 3D printing. I don't get into like the resin printing versus all the other stuff, but it's not really relevant for most people. But I mean, it's what else is there to say about the basics?
Arguably, that is actually to kind of touch on this, because I have both now. I've actually moved into the stereolithography method for mine. So I have an FDM printer still. I've got my Creality that I've done a lot of work on and built up over, you know, replaced all the boards and like all the different doodads that I can, because that's what Creality is about, is that you get the Ender model and you kind of just tinker with it.
It's the Linux version of 3D printing.
It's 100% the Linux version of 3D printing. And so I spend more time fixing the printer than I do printing the printer.
It's the only $99 3D printer that costs $600.
Right. Exactly.
By the time you're done with it,
It really is. It teaches you so much too. So that's the other side of it, is that like you can get prints off of the $99 version of the printer.
Absolutely.
They're not super fantastic, but they're great. They're prints. So I bought an SLA printer, also from Creality. I bought their Halo 1 a couple of years ago. I loved it. It was fantastic. I wrestled with it for the first like 3 months of having it, because I thought that you had to do the same thing with it that you did with the actual Ender. And then I figured out that all you had to do is just actually get the output and then just plug it into the printer and let the printer take care of the settings and not worry about the settings. And it took care of itself and did a wonderful job. And so the two things I would say is that the FDM printers, which are the ones that have the nozzle that heat up filament and then drop it onto a plate and then build up the layers that way, are the best entry level printers. They are the ones that are the lowest toxicity. So if you get the just standard PLA filaments that come with it, they're like a corn based filament, so they don't have a whole bunch of irritants that are going to cause you problems when you've got the extrusions coming out. There are some materials that you can get that are a little bit more in that range of having irritant to them. But for the most part, the FDMs are what you're going to want to start with. The SLA is a lot more finicky. You have to wear gloves. You need a mask. You need a well-ventilated area because the suspension for the liquid that's used for it is formaldehyde. So it's going to cause some kind of toxicity, and it is an irritant just by its nature, and it has to be cured properly. So if you get serious about it and you want really detailed models, that's where to go.
Yeah, and I would say it comes down to, and a lot of what we discussed today will come down to your intended use case. If you're printing miniatures like Warhammer figurines and stuff, probably the resin or SLA printers will give you greater resolution. But even the old Bedslinger FDM printers now have gotten really, really good at doing high detailed prints. And you can even do multicolor prints now as well. So just definitely starting out, the FDM printers, you just set them up on a table, get a spool of filament, load it in, and you're off and running. You don't need to add ventilation. You can amaze your kids and your friends with what you print with that.
So we've thrown a lot of terms around, so the FDM is fused deposition modeling, and it's what most people picture when they picture 3D printing, the nozzle running around a flatbed area. And stereolithography or SLA is the resin printing, and it's much more involved. So those are the two that we're most likely to encounter, but the vast majority will encounter the FDM. And then when referring to the materials, PLA, PETG, ABS, these are different kinds of materials. But again, PLA is probably what most people will encounter, especially in the beginning.
That and ABS. A lot of people ABS is readily available and pretty common. The big difference between the two is the strength, where PLA is it's less toxic, but also not as structurally sound as ABS.
Right.
So if you want to print parts for your Nerf gun, you're going to want ABS. Get a little bit of ventilation and get the ABS, and that'll work out for you.
I will say that ABS usually requires an enclosure, and not all entry-level printers will be able to print because ABS requires a lot more heat to print.
Right.
And also one of the key considerations is keeping your print stuck to the bed. As you're building up these layers, you don't want it separating from the bed because that creates a spaghetti monster. As the filament comes out and it just goes all over the place. So you usually need an enclosure for that. And I will say that PLA has gotten, when we say PLA, there's probably hundreds of different formulations of PLA now, including some that are infused with carbon fibers for strength. There's different formulations of it, some of which, can rival ABS for strength now. So I print in PLA, I print in PETG, which is the same stuff that water bottles are made out of, which is better if you're printing bird houses or bird feeders for outdoors because it weathers. It's a lot more water resistant and weather resistant. And then the other one we've been playing around with is TPU, which is a flexible filament. So if you want to print, covers for your remote or, Crocs that you can wear or anything that's flexible, it's a little bit trickier to print with, but it can be fun. Our son now is obsessed with printing things in TPU just because he likes, bending them and mushing them.
It's amazing.
Off the printer. Yeah.
This stuff is so good too. I met a guy that works at one of the hospitals near me, and part of his shtick is that they model a patient's heart and print it in TPU, and in this very, very specialized kind of TPU, and then they can hand that heart to a cardiac surgeon, and the surgeon can test all of their cuts on the actual patient's heart because they can just print it out like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Can you take it home afterwards? Because that would be kind of cool to have it on the mantle. They took my heart out. I left it on the mantle now.
It would be so neat. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, they just took a scan of your heart. They've got the file. Yeah. Definitely. And
so cool. Send me the file. That's awesome. So let's talk about some real world uses for 3D. We hinted at some of them. What are some of the things you guys have made with or would like to make with 3D printing?
Yeah. So like I said, our now 12-year-old son has gotten really into this over the past year, and he loves printing starships. So he has every Starfleet ship that you could imagine, every Stargate ship. He's built these models. He's painted them so they look really cool. That's kind of a fun usage. Another thing is my grandfather was a sculptor, and we have lots of his sculptures around. And using just a normal phone camera, there's software that you can actually do 3D scans just using the camera, or the if your phone has LiDAR, it uses that. And so we've been scanning my grandfather's sculptures and then printing smaller scale models of them and giving them to my sisters and stuff, in fun colors and stuff. So that's been fun. Brackets, anything that you might run to the hardware store for, you're looking at, this bracket to hold, something to the wall. If I bought it, it would be $10. If I printed it, it would be basically negligible. So once you start getting into, hey, I can actually design and make things, it becomes a lot more appealing there. So our son has gotten to using Tinkercad and Fusion to make his own models. He had a really cool like Lego spaceship he wanted a stand for. So he made a stand that holds it, and displays it on the shelf. He'll make gifts for his teachers and grandparents and that sort of thing. We have, party favors for birthday parties and stuff. You can print out very quickly, like, 30, 60, 90 fidget toys, for kids. Right. And so you don't have to go buy party favors and that sort of thing. Marble tracks, cake toppers, the hold candles that have the number of the kids' age on it. We print a full-scale Zelda sword and scabbard and shield for Halloween. Ghostbusters props, awesome. Yeah, if you're into cosplaying, you probably already have a 3D printer.
Right.
But yeah, it's just so much fun. He's been printing these little Rodney McKay, who's a character on Stargate Atlantis. He's printed probably about a dozen of these at all different shapes and sizes with all different filaments. And so clocks too. Yeah, we've printed various clocks, and you just get a clock motor and put it in it, and it's all 3D printed and stuff. Yeah, so it's there's once you go down the rabbit hole, you'll print a lot of like useless doodads, toys, fidgets, that sort of thing. But then you'll start printing things that you actually display and give away as gifts.
You'll go, wait a minute, that inside part of the tape dispenser got lost again, darn it. Oh, I can just model that and print it out, no problem.
So for something like the Zelda sword, that's obviously much bigger than the 3D printer bed. So you print it in parts and then attach them together?
That's how we did it. Yeah. So we don't have any of the large form printers. We're pretty much limited to things that are maybe 20 centimeters square by 20 centimeters tall. But a lot of the models you get take into account that not everybody has a huge printer. And so they're broken up into chunks. You print the chunks out and then you glue them together. And I could do probably an hour-long podcast on glue for this too, because there's glue, there's cement, there's, things that fuse plastic. But yeah, it's but it's just, if you have kids, it's just a wonderful hobby to explore with them.
I think one of the cooler uses that I've had for it too, we do like the 2-liter bottle launches. When you launch the 2-liter bottle, you pump water into it and then it launches up in the air. And I made a set of fins for one of the rockets so that it could spin as it was going up and it could get a little more altitude. And it was a really neat process sitting down with my kids to do it, because I did it. And the first time I did it, I didn't take into account the thickness of the collar that I was making. And so I printed it out, tried to slide it on the 2-liter bottle and couldn't. And, where in the past that would be a failure and then you would just throw that away and just forget about it. I was like, okay, went back to the program and just made the breadth of it a little bit larger to account for that width, and then printed another one out, popped it on, didn't like the way it sat. So I ended up with like 5 versions of the thing before I got the one that I liked. But that's the beauty of it, is that it cost me nothing but time to go and redesign it, and right. The actual fabrication was negligible. Like, it didn't matter at all. Like the amount of the filament I went through was probably about $3 of filament, and that's because I was making big fins.
Yeah, right. I look. One of the things I keep thinking about is, so if anybody owns their own appliances, like a refrigerator. If you've ever had to buy replacement parts for an appliance, you realize that's where they're making all their money. because if I assembled all the pieces of my fridge and as the parts, it would be worth. I'd end up paying 3 times retail price. A little drawer or shelf is like $70. My fridge is full of little shelves that have massive amounts of Gorilla Tape on them to keep them together because I don't want to spend $70 on a shelf. And I'm thinking, if I had a 3D printer, like this is just a shape. All I need is I could scan it and just put the shape in, and what's more likely is someone's already done all that and the model is somewhere on the internet. I just need to download it. And I keep thinking about stuff like that, around the house where I have all these little things. I have a water pipe thing that it had a bracket that attached it to the joist above it, and the bracket is broken, and now it just kind of hangs. I'm like, I could go to Home Depot and see if I can find another bracket, but I had a 3D printer. I would just print it and put it up there. I'm like, this is the sort of thing I think about.
Yeah.
And
Yep,
another really
absolutely.
fun use. Another really fun use that's kind of pedestrian, but is applicable to everyone is just signage. Like, you can print something on a piece of paper and stick it on your kid's door or on a shelf or a drawer, but it's going to get torn and messed up. You 3D print it on plastic. It's still very, very thin. You can do multicolors by doing color switches. On a standard 3D printer, you can always, stop after one layer, change the color, print the text on top in a different color. You don't need a special multicolor system to do that. And so the kids will just design like multicolor signs for each other, to display all their Ghostbusters toys. They have a Ghostbuster area sign and various other things. And there's actually software out there that'll take photos, color photos or black and white photos, and basically convert them into like basically lithophanes or different color things. And that's very cool as well.
Right. So when you shine a light through it, you can see, because of the thickness of the plastic, you can see the image come out through there. Those look really neat. Yeah. If you haven't seen one of those, I definitely recommend look them up.
One thing that I look at, and I'll have a link in the show notes, is it's sort of a group project now called Gridfinity. This one guy came up with it, but it's an organizing system based on squares, like it's 42 by 42 by 7 millimeter squares, and everything in this Gridfinity system is a multiple of that. And what happens is people have designed all these different Gridfinity organizers that Victor's got some. I'm sure most people who have the 3D printer have them now, but people have created models for all kinds of things to store everything you could imagine, whether it's hardware, whether it's computer stuff, whether it's desk organizers, cables. I have bins full of loose cables. I would love to organize, instead of having these bins that I have to dig through. That's one of the things I would love to look at and see, how could I work with something like that?
And then a lot of those models are available. And if there's not a model, there's probably a base model that you can grab and edit in a program like Blender or Fusion. My personal favorite is FreeCAD. So you just grab one of these programs and throw the model in, add a hole where you want the hole, and then run the print, and you're good to go. And almost invariably, you're going to have something that's either decent. And the good thing about a lot of the slicing software, the software that converts the 3D model into the actual code,
many layers.
It will tell you there's a problem. Most of the time when you throw something on, it'll tell you, hey, there's geometry here that we can't do anything with because it's disconnected from the other pieces that you have on there. And
it'll fix it. Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. It'll tidy it up. You just tell it to tidy it up and it'll pull it back into place.
That's cool. Yeah. So Slicer is the software, and some of the printers will come with their own software. There's also ones you can download, I guess. But Slicer is you feed the 3D model into it, and that's what translates it from 3D model into what the printer will understand as all of the various slices as it builds up the plastic on the board.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, all a 3D printer is 2 heaters and then 4 motors essentially. You have your motors that go in the y-axis, the x-axis, the z-axis. You have a motor that basically runs filament through the hot end and the extruder into the nozzle. and then you have a heating element in the nozzle and a heating element on the bed. And so all the code does is say, move this motor, heat up the bed to this temperature, heat up the nozzle to this temperature. And that's all the 3D printer is doing, is just processing basically like the code you used in elementary school to tell the turtle to go north and south around.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. In Logo or whatever it was. But yeah. And so speaking of that, so one of the reasons we're doing this podcast now is because over the past year and a half, I would say the barrier of entry for getting into 3D printing in terms of price, as well as kind of plug and play ease of use, has dropped substantially. Thomas and I were, we both own Ender V3s, right? Which is like you go to Micro Center, you get your $99 3D printer, but then you have to upgrade the boards, the motors, the extruder, and everything. Now it's basically plug and play. You see them pop up in YouTube channels. There's a Lego YouTube channel I watch, and the guy had bought these IKEA shelves to store all of his loose Legos, but he didn't have any bins to put in them. So Bamboo, which is one of the new players, sent him a 3D printer. He designed Lego bins that fit specifically these IKEA shelves and printed them. Not a 3D printing guy. He's a Lego guy, but, within a couple of weeks, he had this all of his massive Lego collection organized.
And that Bamboo is wildly inexpensive for what it is.
Yeah.
It's an amazing machine, really.
We're talking about the Bamboo Lab A1. So Bamboo is a relatively new entrant, and their philosophy has been, in the past, 3D printers were hobbyist things. They were all open source. You build them yourself, or they come mostly assembled. Bamboo took the approach that was kind of like Apple, which is, these people aren't going to be experts in 3D printing. We'll just give them a really solid printer that's more or less set up out of the box. It's plug and play. We control the software, so we know exactly how our software is interacting with our hardware. We control the end-to-end experience, so you're in that kind of walled garden environment. So if you're a hobbyist who likes to tinker, maybe not the best for you, but if you're just somebody who wants to get into 3D printing and have it work. And the A1 printer itself is under $300 and around $500 if you buy their multicolor spooling system, the printer will basically unspool one color and grab another color, which allows you to do multiple colors per individual layer. It's nothing that I think you really need to get started. I wouldn't recommend it.
I wouldn't recommend it to get started, because if anything goes wrong, you're going to be wondering, is it this thing or that thing? And then the great thing about the Bamboo is that's an add-on. So you don't have to buy it, and you don't have to rebuy the entire printer to get the 4-color spool. You can just buy the 4-color spool separately from all the things I've seen. You can just add it on later if you want to.
Yeah. One of my initial problems with the Bamboo was, and we'll go into another problem with it, was when they first came out, the replacement parts, because you're going to, nozzles are made out of brass, which is a very heat conductive, but very soft metal. So after, hundreds of hours of sending hot plastic through it, it starts to get a little loose, and you want to replace it to get, your definition and your prints back. And at the time you could only buy replacement parts through Bamboo's website, but now they're widely available on Amazon. So, we're talking $15 for a replacement nozzle that you'll change out every year or two. So yeah, I recommend that. The only consideration is that you are using their software. It's an end-to-end experience, so they do control, your data basically that you're sending to print. They have various safeguards in place, but so that's a consideration. But for people who are just getting started, I would still recommend the Bamboo Lab A1 as a good entry point.
Yeah, on their website it's $359. Yeah.
They go on sale like all the time though. So.
Yeah. Look for a sale for it for sure.
And because it's had such a big impact on the industry, Creality, who makes the Ender printers, has just announced, and I don't know when they'll start shipping, but the Creality High, High.
It looks amazing.
Yeah, it does.
So good. I want one.
Yeah, me too. I'm saving. And again, it's going to be the same price basically as the A1. Creality has their own multicolor system. You don't need to invest in that. But so for me, I would depending on how well the reviews are when that comes out. I mean, Creality's been making 3D printers for as long as there have been 3D printers. So on the strength of their brand, and you can use different software with it too, presumably.
Yeah, it's solid. That was the first SLA I went with, was a Creality SLA, just because I knew the name. And then when I wanted to upgrade, I went for an Elegoo, but just because I wanted the 4K, the high definition, like super detailed models.
Yeah, I primarily use Prusa printers because they've been, Joseph Prusa is a Czech. He has basically was a pioneer in the 3D printing and built a business where he sells completely open source printers that are very solid and have a number of technological advances in them that other companies quickly copy. They are more expensive, but the advantage is they have a really good support through Prusa. Like anytime, day or night, you can pop on their website. We had an issue with one, and my 11-year-old just got on and was talking to some guy in Czechoslovakia about the printer, and talked him through. Also a Stargate fan, and talked him through fixing it. And it's just really cool too, because, a couple weeks ago, he came upstairs from where the printers are and was just in tears. He's like, I did everything right, but now I've got this big blob of filament on the nozzle, and it was really
those.
bad. The blobs of death, and it basically eaten the hot end. But fortunately, we had $10 worth of parts on hands, and I was like, this isn't a big deal. We'll take the nozzle out, we'll clean it, and half an hour later, it was all completely rebuilt. So I really like the Prusa printers. We did an upgrade on one of them to basically change our current model into a newer model. I got the kit, and he just he's 11 years old, went off for an afternoon and completely rebuilt the printer, with a couple Allen wrenches. And
that's all it takes.
Yep.
I think that's the beauty of it too, really, is that it is machining. Like you have to learn about machining. You have to learn about leveling. Even if you have an auto leveler, you still got to learn about what it means for a 3D printer to be level, as opposed to just putting a level on it. It's a very different thing saying that the bed is actually all square to the system and all of the stuff that goes into that. So there's a lot of really good experience, especially for kids, getting into this, because they learn a lot of spatial awareness. And then they also learn a lot about how real world machines work, because you can design something to be flawless on the computer, but then as soon as you try and put it on the bed, something's going to go wrong, and you've got to account for that.
Excellent. Yeah, the problem solving aspects. And I will say, just before we move on, the one product that has revolutionized 3D printing for me, and it costs $20, is Magigoo, which is like Magi, as in the gifts of the Magi, and then goo, as in goopy goo, Magigoo. It's this glue. It's basically a glue stick of liquid glue. But since we started using that on our beds, we've had like no problems with bed adhesion. It completely replaced. I was using some really expensive like nanopolymer adhesive, for a while that you paint on and stuff, but this Magigoo, it's like the tube has lasted us forever. And like I said, it was $20 and fixed everything. So if you are a 3D printer and you're having problems with things coming up off the bed, it happens sometimes, try some Magigoo.
So I'm gonna nerd out with you for a minute, Victor. Yeah. Do you guys use glass beds, or do you use the ones that come with the printers?
We use the ones that I did get a glass bed at one time. Didn't really use it with the load cell on the Prusa Mark IV S. You can actually print on anything. Like you could put fabric down and print on that, or a PlayStation and print on that if you wanted to. But I use the what's the different the ones, they have different coating on these bed plates and stuff. But yeah, they're all the metal ones, because the bed itself is magnetic. I don't have to use clips to hold it in place and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I moved over to a glass bed and I've loved it. And but it is kind of janky, because I've just got the like alligator clips holding it in place.
Yeah. Yep, I have one of those for my Ender too. Yeah.
So I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but we'll have links for YouTube channels for beginners. A bunch of those, some good places, as well as places to get 3D models from. Yep. Some of them are open source, others are paid, but you'll be able to check all those out. I just want to finish up with just a few more tips for beginners? Maybe kind of going over some of this.
I'll give you the one that's going to save you the most time before anything else.
Yeah.
Learn how to do a cold pull. There's a special kind of filament that you can get that you just heat the nozzle way up to the highest temperature. You put this filament in, and then you let the nozzle cool down. And then at a certain point, the nozzle or the filament gets hard to pull back out of the nozzle. And that's exactly what you want. And then you start heating it back up again. And when you pull it out, it brings all of the gunk that's inside of your nozzle back up out with it, which is it's the best thing. It's called a cold pull.
Yeah.
Nice.
The new Prusa firmware does that automatically. And
that's so cool.
Cold pull button and it does it.
That's neat.
And the other thing I would say is don't do what I do or do and go crazy buying filament. There's a great Twitter account called like 3D Printing Deals, and they'll every time filament goes on sale, they'll put it there because you look at it and they have this filament that is rainbow gradient. So if you print like a statue, it like changes color as you print up, or it has the filament itself is actually like 3 colors in one strand. And so you print these things, and depending on which angle you look at it from, it changes colors. It's 3 different colors depending on which angle you look at it from. And then there's silk filament, which is like shiny, not as durable, but it looks really cool. And then, there's matte filament, which also looks really cool. And some is easier to sand. And so now I have like 3 big, huge plastic bins full of spools of filament. Don't do that. Get something you like, and, maybe 2 or 3 rolls and use them up and then replace them, because otherwise it takes over. The printer itself doesn't take up much room, but storing filament quickly does. And some filament is if you live in a humid place, some filament is sensitive to moisture in the air, so you'll need to like PETG, for example, or TPU, you might actually need to dry it out or heat it up before you print with it. Not so much of a problem here in Michigan in the winter where it's very, very dry, but
in Florida it's a horrible problem constantly.
Yeah.
You also have a note, you may not want to buy a lot of filament, but do keep extra nozzles on hand.
Yeah. I mean, you can, with Amazon, you can get replacement parts in a day or two, but it's hard telling a kid that they can't print for a day or two because you're waiting on parts.
Having maybe one extra nozzle may be useful, I guess. Yeah, backup.
I have you can buy them in sets of 20 for next to nothing. They really are dirt cheap.
Yeah,
the nozzles.
Depending on the printer,
that's true.
The A1 uses a proprietary nozzle that's built into a hot end, and so that's like $15. But then you're replacing the heat sink as well. And the Prusa ones have moved to proprietary nozzles that have a dual metal tube based in, which makes it very easy to swap. You just loosen the thumb screw, it pops out and pops back in. But they do get more expensive and stuff now. But they last a really long time unless you do something goofy to them.
One piece of advice that seems to apply to a lot of different things is stick to the name brand. Don't buy the cheapest possible filament. You kind of get what you pay for. That
is true. I really like Polymaker. Is a solid brand. They have basically every color and formulation, but I do sometimes buy the cheap stuff on Amazon when it goes on sale for like under $10 a roll.
Hatchbox has always been pretty good for me. I haven't really had a problem with them, and they're on the cheaper end.
Okay. Yeah. Any other tips we want to give to folks before we wrap up?
If you have a library near you that has a makerspace, I would recommend trying out 3D printing with them, because a lot of them have makerspace and then the availability to run 3D prints through their stuff. So check with your library and see if they have something like that. That's the way my kids really got into it. And then, they could design something in Tinkercad, send it to the library, and then have 20 copies of it the next time they went in.
Nice. Excellent. That's a good point. All right. So one last recommendation too is another resource would be Reddit, which is good for lots of things. There's a subreddit on 3D printing, which you can imagine is full of lots of people who are really into 3D printing.
Yeah,
who probably be willing to answer some questions.
And even the AI search that's built into a lot of browsers will answer a lot of questions now related to 3D printing. It gets its answers from Reddit and other places, but it's uncanny just how many questions that answers now.
And the community around 3D printing is pretty decent too. They're just mention that you're a beginner, and I do that a lot of times too, just to get the better answers and maybe not the I've been printing for 15 years, I should know what I'm doing. But they really are. They love helping, and they love troubleshooting too. That's what you'll find a lot of times. Is they'll say, well, have you tried this? Is this kind of thing going on? Where are you located? Just to get more information about what the environment might be like, or did you put your 3D printer under an air conditioning vent? And you're like, I didn't know this was a problem, but it is. So they'll let you know.
Yeah. And the last thing I will say is, like, it's just been with my kids, like I mentioned, my 11 and 12-year-old, just watching him actualize kind of that inner engineer and that artist and creative problem solver. Like, he has mechanical skills and design skills that I never would have discovered, and he never would have developed any other way. But it's just something to a kid, and to me too, about seeing this thing suddenly take form in the real world that you've designed on a computer. It's just a really gratifying experience, and sharing that with your kids has just been a really amazing gift.
My kids love building things with Lego and all kinds of stuff like that. I can imagine taking this to the next level where they can build something from scratch, something that's only in their imagination. I mean, they're so creative with, Lego pieces. I can't imagine the stuff that they could come up with just out of their mind that we could put into Tinkercad and make real. So that in itself may be the whole reason to do it. I love that idea of inspiring kids and, making them into even, amateur engineers. I mean, to have an engineering mindset in life will take you in many directions, no matter what you do in life. Having that engineering mindset about problem solving is very useful. So I like that. So if anyone has further questions about 3D printing, I'm sure we'll come back to this topic again and again. We'd love to get your questions. You can send them to technology@sqpn.com, and we'd love to bring them up again. Before we move on, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of technology, including Mary N., Peter P., Carmen M., Wayne K., and Lance. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of technology and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So because we had questions and a lot to say about 3D printing, we only have one headline, but I think it's a good one. Space object or sports car, how a Tesla Roadster was briefly mistaken for an asteroid. So a few years ago, folks may remember that SpaceX launched one of Elon Musk's old Tesla Roadsters into space on the end of a rocket. I think it was a Falcon. And it was a bit of a publicity stunt. Well, it's been out there kind of in orbit and came back around, and astronomers thought, when they first saw it out there, thought it was a new asteroid, and they even went so far as to name it. The things in space everything gets named, and then it turned out, nope, it's just Elon Musk's misparked car.
It's so funny too, because I think it was an amateur astronomer that noticed it and then called it in, and they give it a classification because this is something we didn't have on our charts, and then they after doing the math and getting all the trajectories, and they were like, oh, hold on, we know what this is. Yeah.
It was only 17 hours that it was misidentified.
Yeah. At least it wasn't a Gould mothership. Right. We run into a lot.
Like that episode of Stargate, with the guy in the backwoods.
Discovers an asteroid heading straight towards Earth. Yeah.
The poor guy calling in, though, like he thought he found something, It's like, oh, man.
Well, he did.
Yeah.
So
just man-made.
Just his junk flying around out there. It is funny. So that's, just a little bit of the funny stuff of space exploration these days. Who would have thunk? And so that's our headline. Let's move on to our picks of the week. And Victor, why don't you go first? What is your pick this week?
Yeah, so I'm having another midlife crisis. Men of my age tend to have a number of them. But one thing I've always wanted to do was learn how to play the electric bass. I've been, as a keyboard player, I've been kind of in awe of people who can play fretted instruments. And, a lot of my favorite musicians are bass players. And I watched some really good YouTube channels around it. And so I finally said, you know what, this is the year I'm going to learn how to play electric bass. And I have an audio interface. I have amp simulations on my computer. I have amplifiers and stuff. But all this involves, going, where my computer is or where the amp is, plugging it in. I have to be near a power outlet. And I was like, I just want something I could just plug the bass into, plug a set of headphones into, and just practice and have it sound good. And so I looked around and there's various, what they call multi-effects pedals, which have all of the different, delay and chorus and all of the guitar and bass effects you'd want, amp simulators built in. They were kind of pricey and kind of bulky, and you had to add double A's or run them off a wall wart power supply. But then there's this Chinese company that's come on the scene. I guess the name is supposed to be pronounced Moore, but I'm from the Midwest and it's spelled Mooer. Yeah, so of course it's Mooer. But they've made different kinds of guitar effects pedals and multi-effects pedals, and they have one. I just recently have gotten it, have been trying it out, but it's basically the size of a, slightly larger than an Altoids tin. It has its own battery, and it has you plug your, guitar or bass into it, you plug a pair of headphones in it, you turn it on, and you can practice. I mean, it has outputs too. You could run it into an amp or, a recorder or something if you wanted to. But it does use an app. You have to download their app if you want to modify the effects and sounds that are on there, and use Bluetooth to connect to it. But once you've done that once and, you have some good sounds, you basically can just, turn it on, and within a few seconds you can be playing and stuff and turn it off, and you don't have to, it's like it fits in your pocket. You could take it, pretty much anywhere, and it has its own battery, like I said. And it's under $100, which was also kind of my price point that I was trying to hit as well. And so, yeah, it's pretty neat. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Thomas, what's your pick this week?
So mine's not necessarily something you're going to buy for yourself, but something to follow. We talked, the last time I was on, we were talking space tech. We're talking 3D printing tech this time. So I figured I'm just going to mash the two together. And if you haven't heard of them, there's this company called Rocket Lab that is a up and coming, kind of plucky, rocket building group. So SpaceX, but not as big and out there as SpaceX.
Flashy.
Yeah, exactly. But they 3D print their rockets, which is super cool. So it's all actually 3D printed, and or a majority of what they have is 3D printed. And so it's allowed them to do a lot of really neat stuff, iterating through. So they don't tend to catch their rockets the way that the bigger guys are doing right now, but they can build a lot of rockets really quickly to test and go through. So, if they blow up a rocket on the field, it's like, okay, yeah, we can redesign that and print another one out. It's not a huge deal for them. But they're really neat. Their last three missions, I love the mission names. So the last three missions that they've run, one was called Owl the Way Up, OWL the Way Up. One was called Ice Baby, and the second ice is AIS. Hasta la vista, which was haste, was the acronym that they were using, and so they had that in. And then a couple other ones, they had a sky full of SARS. So SARS were the things they were sending up. And, yeah. But so they have these fun names. Really cool company, just really neat. They were New Zealanders that started out and have just kind of, they're really quiet. They're not super out there, but you can watch some of their launches. And they just did one of their first launches from U.S. soil earlier this year. So I think sometime in January, they did a launch from U.S. soil, which was a big deal for them because they had never had that permission to do it before, and they got it. So that was really nice. But yeah, I'm really interested in them because of the 3D printed rocket technology. That's just so cool to me.
That is a cool idea.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I love this new era of commercial spaceflight. All these different ideas, all these different ways of solving the similar problems. Mm-hmm. It's really cool. So my pick this week is I picked a few weeks ago something else from Elevation Labs, an AirTag. It was like a 10-year battery for an AirTag, which was really awesome idea. But this one is based on actually a trip I've got coming up this summer to Italy for the SQPN pilgrimage for the Jubilee year to Rome and parts of Italy. But it's an AirTag fabric mount, and what it is it's you put an AirTag in it, and then it adheres through some various gluing technology, I presume. But it's soft, and so it's flexible and bends, and so you put it inside your luggage or a bag somewhere hidden. So like a lot of luggage AirTag stuff hangs off of the handle, so it's exposed, it's out there, and someone could just easily rip it off, but it could also get knocked off, in the baggage handling or whatnot. This is designed to kind of put the AirTag inside where it's nice and safe, and it's black. Usually I hate like the very dark things because you can't find them in your bag. Well, that's actually the point of that. It's black so that it's hard to see. So someone looking for it isn't going to find it very easily. Now, clearly it's not designed to be taken off and then put back. It's very permanent in this, but when the battery runs on the AirTag, you do peel it off, then you replace the battery, but then you need a new AirTag fabric mount. But they're not expensive, relatively. You get 4 of them for $35. One is $14. But given how long the batteries on an AirTag last, it's not a bad deal. And frankly, I like the idea of putting one inside each of mine and my wife's bags for the trip, just so that we can keep track of our bags as we travel about through Italy. Cool. Elevation Labs they've really taken this AirTag idea and run with it. I mean, they have so many different ideas for like mountain bikes and for a dog collar, and they even have one that's for Milwaukee drills, like the Milwaukee brand in red, because everything else is black and white, but they have it in red.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking, Thomas? Get yourself some TPU.
Print you can
probably 3D print. Yeah. Now you're talking. Get some 3D print my own,
some Magigoo apparently.
Magigoo will work. Yeah, or just whatever sort of fabric adhesive they have out there now. But that's very cool.
That is actually a great idea. See, now there's another reason for me to get a 3D printer.
Yeah, any kind of AirTag. Yeah.
We'll keep giving them to you, Tom. You just keep asking.
Pays for itself. Yeah,
it's guy money. Like it's $35 off of the price of the 3D printer because I don't have to buy these.
Yeah. There you go.
I'm not sure that'll work, but we'll try it.
I bought this multi-effects guitar pedal, and it didn't cost as much as the one I could have bought. So we actually saved money.
Exactly. All right. So that'll do it for our picks of the week, and that'll do it for our show. So we'd love to get your feedback on anything we've talked about this time, and let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/technology or the StarQuest Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to technology@sqpn.com. Visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. You'll find links from our discussion and our picks of the week on our show notes at starquest.fm/TEC287. That is the show number. Be sure to write a review in Apple Podcasts or one of the podcast directories, or leave us a rating wherever that's possible. That helps us wherever you do that. And be sure to share the podcast with your friends. If you know someone who's maybe thinking about 3D printing, share this episode with them. You'll do them a big favor, and you'll help us out too. That helps us grow the podcast and reach even more folks. And so until next time, Thomas Sanjurjo, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
It's been great.
Victor Lambs, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest. Here's another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy. The Secrets of Sacred Art. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found or at starquest.fm/art.